Kirsten and Karl, thank you both very much for coming on the show today. I appreciate your time. And for the people who don't know what Wonderlab Doozy Pots is, could you both just introduce yourselves and tell the people a little bit about your company?
Sure. So I am Kirsten Sutaria, the Chief of Curious Creation at Wonderlab Doozy Pots. We are a plant-based gelato company, and we are based in Cleveland, Ohio. We make our gelatos with a blend of organic oat and hemp milk. So we are first to the category in the plant-based space to be using hemp, and we think that ice cream is just a perfect vehicle to show people how delicious and nutritious hemp can be.
Awesome. And I'm Karl Sutaria, known as Chief Voice of Reason within Doozy Pots, and that's largely because I used to be a lawyer. I'm a recovering lawyer, and now I form the second half of Doozy Pots.
Okay, awesome. From my understanding, in the little bit in the research that I did, Kirsten, you were with Ben and Jerry's, and that brought you to the UK.
Yes.
Okay, and that's where you and Karl met?
Yep. So I studied food science in undergrad, started working for Unilever right out of graduation, and grew up in Vermont, really lucked out, and had the opportunity to go do product development for Ben and Jerry's, which growing up in the town where Ben and Jerry's is from and going on the factory tour a million times, seeing the kind of QA and R&D team there, I was like, wow, I want to make ice cream like that for my job when I grow up. So I did 9 years of product development as a flavor guru at Ben and Jerry's. And back in 2014, I hopped upon to go over to the Global Ice Cream Development Center for Ben and Jerry's to work on developing the plant-based line. And then through a friend, a very old friend from Vermont who was living in London at the time, he knew Karl through his sister, and then I met Karl, and the rest was history. And I think I really hooked him when I told him that my job was to make and eat ice cream for a living.
Yeah, that really trumped my job of being a corporate tax lawyer. So, Kirsten was the interesting one in the relationship, is the interesting one in the relationship, I should say. But certainly at that time, it was, she was more fun when we went to parties and dinners and stuff. When she told people about her job, that was usually the end of everyone else speaking, and it was just her talking about the wonders of making ice cream.
Yeah, because I can imagine, I guess, a party conversation telling people that you're a tax lawyer wouldn't be the most popular answer.
Never goes very well. Yeah, I don't recommend trying it. Yeah,
that's funny. Okay, cool. So that's nice. That's a nice story there. So one of my questions, Kirsten, was going to be what got you into food science? But I think you kind of just answered it a little bit there. So as you were growing up and seeing kind of the firsthand behind the scenes, I guess you could say, of like the factory tours of Ben and Jerry's, is that what got you interested in then going to college and studying how to become a food scientist?
Pretty close, yeah. So I grew up in a foodie family before people said the word foodie. My parents owned restaurants. My mom worked in the wine industry. My dad did corporate product development. So at a young age, my friends and my brother and I were focus grouped at my house for whatever products my dad was working on from a product development standpoint. Really, I've just loved food my whole life, and then kind of seeing food in action, like being able to, I like always such a curious person, and being able to see a factory sort of at its peak and how cool of a product, and then knowing that you can have a food job and not work in a restaurant was really exciting to me. I love the restaurant business and I love hospitality, but it's not the most welcoming or forgiving industry to work in. So when I learned that you could kind of play with your food and create new food products, that's what got me hooked in. So I've been in the kitchen since I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and it just seemed like a pretty natural thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. From like an outside perspective, and me not having any science background or anything like that, when I think of like developing products for Ben and Jerry's, that seems like a very interesting job in just trying different things and testing out different products and bringing things home and having Karl and your family test different things. But a lot of it's like backed in science and chemistry and how different compounds mix together, right?
Yeah. So ice cream is one of the most, if not the most complex product we eat. So it's a 4-phase solution. You have a water phase, you have a solute phase, you have a fat emulsified, you're holding air, and you're also eating product that has 3 different states. So you have a solid state, you've got ice in there, you've got sugars in there, you have a liquid state, and you also have a gas state. So it's just this really complex, interesting food that we eat. So there's a lot of physical chemistry and physics that go into it, from kind of thermodynamics to freezing point depressions, flavor development. Things taste different when they're frozen, how much fats and sugars are in there. So really technical. I could probably talk about the science of ice cream for an hour, but it's a fun and exciting product to work on. And the Ben and Jerry's side of it, like, those pints are serious feats of engineering, and part of my job as a flavor guru was to come up with like the most new and exciting flavors. And when you're making 6 pints by hand, that's one thing, but when you need to scale it up and make 60,000 pints in a day, you've got people who are engineers, you have your product developers, and then you have your guys in the factory that you work with all the time, and they're like, oh my God, I cannot believe you're trying to put this combination of chunks and swirls and ice cream into this thing, and you want to do it at 200 pints a minute. Yeah, there's some serious like science and engineering that goes into it, and my job, which I still do now, is like coming up with a concept and then figuring out like the legwork to make that concept go from like, yeah, we made 6 pints in a kitchen, to we're going to make 60,000 pints, and they're going to go, in some cases, across the entire world. So yeah.
Yeah, you're giving me more appreciation for ice cream and frozen products in general.
Right? It's like boom.
Yeah.
I've never thought that much into it, but it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there. Okay, so I'm curious, like, at what point at what point did hemp kind of stand out to you in that process? Was it at Ben and Jerry's, or was it growing up in Vermont? You just knew always the benefits of hemp, or kind of how did all that start?
Yeah, I mean, I've known about hemp in all of its forms. I would say probably in 5th grade in the 90s, when it was cool to wear a hemp necklace. That was probably my first foray into
Nice.
hemp. And then being a teenager in Vermont, you learn about hemp in its various forms. But as part of my job doing product development, a lot of that is sort of looking at trends, identifying trends, doing ingredient research. So plant-based sort of became popular, and I developed a plant-based line for Ben and Jerry's, and then went on to work for a company in London called Innocent Drinks, who do smoothies, juices, plant milks. And in some of my sort of trend research and ingredient research, I got really interested in the nutritional and sustainability benefits of hemp as a food. Started learning more. This was kind of 2017, learning more about, my first question was, why is no one using this? And then I quickly realized, well, it's illegal to grow, and you can use it, but there's actually no supply chain for functional hemp ingredients. So, but I looked at something like pea protein, which when I first started using it in 2013 was like a pretty fringe ingredient. There were a couple suppliers that did it. It didn't taste great. It was not that functional. And looking at the last 9 years of the pea protein industry, I was really like, hey, hemp could be right up there with it if it sort of got brought to the forefront. So I got so excited about hemp and its nutritional benefits, which I thought would translate really well to functional benefits to make ice cream with. Told Karl about it, who at that point was practicing law, and he's he's very curious, but he's very curious in a different lawyerly way, which is I'm going to do research and poke holes in all of your arguments, where I'm like, I'm going to do research and figure out why this is so cool.
Yeah.
So I told Karl, I was like, I don't know. I was at this point, I was working at Innocent Drinks making juices and smoothies. And I was like, I think I want to quit my job and I just miss ice cream. And I really think we should start a hemp ice cream business. And he was like, oh, yeah, cool. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, safe to say I wasn't immediately convinced, but I knew she knew her stuff. And I did my, what I'd been trained to do as a lawyer, and went away and did as much research as I could. Um, and I was kind of blown away by both hemp's potential as a food ingredient and in terms of its application in ice cream because of its functionality and its nutrition, but also because of the sustainability side of it. That's a topic I'd always been interested in. At the time, I was kind of getting really interested in things like renewable energy and really thinking about um, how to make the world a better place on that front. And I was really impressed with what I learned about hemp sustainability credentials. So I thought, you know what, she's really onto something here. And then there was at the time there was the movement in the US to legalize growing hemp, which was a big deal through the Farm Bill. And so we kind of started thinking seriously about, wow, that's going to be an interesting time once it's legal to grow there, and there's going to be a renaissance of hemp use in the US. As we were talking just before we came on air, it's got such an amazing history both in the US and worldwide in terms of all of its applications. So it felt like a pretty exciting time, and it felt like it had really direct applicability to the kind of product that Kirsten knows how to make really well, and fits into a lot of trends at the moment. So I was, instead of poking holes in it, I was like, you know what, let's do this. This is great. This is the time to jump and take this leap, and we think we can create something really cool. So off we went.
Yeah, that's interesting because it is like the perfect time to have been doing that research with the Farm Bill passing in 2018. It's like if there was ever a time to do this, like it makes sense now. Kind of just like you said, like the renaissance of hemp is kind of coming back. And so was moving back to the States part of like the business plan for Wonderlab, or how did you guys go from the UK back to the States?
Yeah, we had kind of looked at where we wanted to go, and the US has a larger addressable market. There are some different price dynamics on how grocery works in the UK. Brexit had a little bit of an impact. A lot of people say like, oh, well, if you're in the UK, then you have an entire market within Europe for ice cream. But every country within Europe has very different consumption habits. The US is a very in-home ice cream consumer, meaning pints and tubs and quarts. You just bring them home and you eat them. Europe and the UK is a very out-of-home market, meaning you stop at a corner shop and you get something on a stick or a bar, or an ice pop, and it's just a very different dynamic. So we thought coming back to the US, there's just a bigger opportunity there, and you have a bigger addressable market that all speaks one language for the most part. You've got some national retailers. So we just thought, let's, make the obvious move and move from London to Cleveland, which we did in 2019.
And also it was there was an element to do with the excitement around hemp in the US, as we discussed, was palpable at that time. So I think we also thought that was a particularly interesting angle. There was more excitement in the US than there was in the UK about hemp as a crop. It was probably more closely tied to the country's history, and we saw some exciting things happening around that. So we thought that would be a good place to be, to set this business up, as well as what Kirsten discussed in terms of the addressable market for plant-based foods and plant-based ice creams in particular.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. I actually just saw. So I'm in Massachusetts, and there's a new the adult use cannabis and recreational cannabis is legal in Massachusetts, and there's a new infused ice cream company actually that
Mm-hmm.
puts THC into their ice cream. So that's kind of new. I haven't seen much of that on the regulated cannabis side of things, but maybe future collaboration ideas with major cannabis brands or something. Um, to take a couple steps back, like what is it about hemp, uh, whether it nutritional or kind of chemically, that makes it a great product or additive for plant-based gelato?
Yeah, so we use hemp to replace the dairy fats and protein that you would find in a regular dairy ice cream. We use a blend of organic hemp heart oil, hemp protein, whole oat flour, and water, and a little bit of cocoa butter to make our kind of heavy cream hemp base. And it has a really good amino acid profile. So those proteins help to emulsify. And they also have a great nutritional profile. And then a lot of plant based ice creams and regular dairy ice creams are very high in saturated fat, especially plant based ice creams. Most of them use coconut cream or coconut oil, which actually isn't, if you think about coconut oil, it's solid at room temperature. So when it's frozen, it's actually like quite heavy on the palate. Um, so hemp oil being much lower in saturated fat and has a good blend of healthy fats allows for sort of a cleaner eat and your flavors to pop a little bit more. And then from a sustainability angle, you know, we're not using oils coming out of Asia. We're not using, we can use less inputs for hemp. So you're not using nuts, it's allergen free. There's just ranging from a sort of nutritional standpoint to a sustainability standpoint, and from a chemical physical standpoint. Hemp was really just kind of an optimal seed ingredient for us to use. And I think there are a few brands now that are using things like sunflower oil or canola oil in their ice cream. So kind of moving to that lower saturated fat. And I think hemp can compete right up there. Our biggest challenge was because hemp wasn't allowed to be grown until a couple of years ago, there was literally no supply chain. So like, yeah,
Mm,
you could grow it, but that doesn't just immediately turn on an entire supply chain for very functional food ingredients. Um, so it's been very interesting and very heartening to see those types of supply chains grow. Um, it's still very nascent. There's a ways to go to be able to kind of compete with some of those bigger kind of industrial crop oils, but getting there.
yeah.
And I think it's making delicious products like this that really help. The more people that are making foods with hemp and the more people learn that, our goal is to bring hemp out of the dusty back corner of your local health food store, and make it front and center. And we initially started out as a hemp-based foods company, and we very quickly realized that we needed to be more of a plant-based food company that uses hemp, um, because there's quite a few hurdles for using hemp in foods right now.
Okay, yeah. Let's dive into some of those, because the way that I found out about your product in the first place was when I was making kind of just like news aggregate videos of taking the headlines from the hemp and cannabis space from the week and making a recap video. I came across an article that highlighted some of the difficulties that you've had running ads on. I think the article specifically called out Facebook and mentioned, your packaging, I think, used to have hemp right on the packaging, and there was some ads that weren't being allowed to be run because of the use of hemp, even though it's not even CBD, it's just hemp oil. So yeah, go into some of the details around kind of what those barriers looked like, and what led you to the decision to kind of transition to more plant based instead of hemp based.
Karl, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I can start with it. I think it was Facebook's policy in this particular instance, the article you're talking about, saying, picking up the word hemp in the image, or if you use the word hemp in text in the ad itself, and saying this is a drug because it's hemp, and hemp is CBD, or hemp is cannabis, and it's all one thing, and we can't distinguish between hemp seeds, which is what we use in our product, which is a food grade safe product that's been sold and consumed in the US for decades, and has a legal basis for being sold in the US. I think there was a court case back in 2002 that basically gave the stamp of approval federally for hemp food products to be sold and consumed in the country. But Facebook's policy decided not to just differentiate between that and the more kind of gray area around CBD and ingestible CBD in particular. And that's where it gets even more confusing, because I think if your product was a CBD product that was topical, i.e., something you apply on the skin, it was fine. But if it was a CBD product that was ingestible, it wasn't fine. We're not a CBD product, but we are ingestible, and Facebook's policy couldn't tell if you know couldn't distinguish that. So
Okay.
yeah, it was just a mess, and they trying to get in touch with someone at Facebook and talk about it. There's you just get like automated answers, and it's frustrating because as a young brand, love it or not, Facebook marketing through Facebook itself and Instagram is a big part of creating some awareness, especially when you've got limited funds. And so really felt unfair to us that other brands could talk about why they were using a almond nut base or a cashew base or coconut or whatever, but we couldn't talk about one of the stars of our product. So that was a real challenge, and it's still a challenge. I think we did decide to take hemp off the packaging so that we could use photos of the product in our ads to start off with. I think hopefully at some stage we'll be able to add it back in. We haven't had any direct communication with Facebook on the matter yet. You saw the article. There are other brands that are experiencing the same issues, so we're kind of in the background. We're kind of getting together to try and change policies like that. And then in other areas, we've run into, to give an example, as a local grocery chain who took over a couple of stores locally that are pretty hip and trendy and progressive and sell some hemp products in there. And we're keen to bring the ice cream in. But because they got taken over by this bigger, more sort of conventional grocery store, when we tried to submit our product, they just said, no, we're not taking any hemp products right now. We just don't understand it. We don't get it. And it's just not something we're going to do. So, that's obviously a challenge. And we also had to help educate the Ohio Department of Agriculture about what hemp was and why it was being used in foods, and how that was different to CBD and other kind of other applications of hemp that are more gray in terms of legal status. So they also admitted, when they first got up and running, that they didn't really know what hemp was in terms of its use in food. And so we had to have a conversation with them and effectively educate them. And they were open to learning, to give them credit, and effectively help them understand why hemp was okay to use in foods. So that was also, a challenging time. For a minute there, they said, yeah, you can't make that. You can't, you can't make ice cream with hemp in it. Nope, stop what you're doing.
We're like, we had to cool. We just moved here.
Yeah, and we had to tell them. Look, no, we can't. Look, we've looked into this. We know we can.
Yeah.
And here's why.
Yeah. And
they kind of went, oh, yeah, I guess so, but we also don't understand what this is all about. So can you tell us? So but that's in a way that's part of the fun too. Not always fun, but it's part of the fun for us to help educate people on what hemp is in its many forms, and in particular why it's great in food and why it's great to eat, and then specifically for us, obviously, why it makes a great, delicious plant-based ice cream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like any company doing anything in the hemp space right now, education needs to be a part, like an aspect that you're focusing on in terms of your just sales process, because there's so many people like that who just like, oh, eating hemp, like that what is that? Like, I'm not going to go eat a plant material or whatever it might be, I've been doing just like random pop-ups where I'll just have industrial hemp products, and I'll go to a park or a dispensary in Massachusetts, and I have a bag of hemp seeds from a company based out of Texas, Cousin Hemp. And I was surprised at how many people are just like surprised that you can eat hemp seeds. And it's like you can
That's
eat so
interesting.
many different types of seeds.
Even in a dispensary. So if you're talking about like a cannabis dispensary, you'd go there and people would still be surprised about being able to eat hemp
Yeah. Yep.
seeds. That's really interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Well, that just shows you both. I think some of the educational challenges you have, but also the scale of potentially the opportunity, because I feel like that person in the cannabis store is going to be like, wow, I can eat hemp seeds and they're great for me for this other reason. Wow, that's so cool. Like, I can use cannabis from the store in one way, and I can use, what is effectively cannabis seeds in a different way, to enjoy, to enjoy eating. That's cool. So I think that's an opportunity for us too. So I think they go hand in hand, right? You educate people as much as you can, and then that also opens the door to opportunities to convert people to customers and fans.
yeah, no, 100%. Um, I'm surprised that this is the first frozen treat product, I guess you'll say, that has hemp in it. And it's not just hemp oil. So there's obviously, like we spoke before, there's a lot of science and technical know-how and ability that you have, Kirsten, that made you able to kind of create a good product that I'm assuming tastes good. I haven't been able to try it yet.
We got to get you some.
Yeah, I plan to, I have some trips planned later this year, and I was
Oh,
looking on
cool.
your website and corresponded with. I'm going to be in some places like New Mexico and California that you guys have
Yeah, great.
some
Well, make sure you
retailers.
tell us when you're headed there. We'll get you some, we'll get you some cool stuff, and make sure you get to try it. So
Awesome,
yeah, we'd love to know what you think. Yeah,
cool.
and just to pick up on what you just said, what's cool is that we're not forcing hemp into the ice cream. It's there because it makes sense for a great tasting product.
Mm,
Um, but it also makes sense from a positioning perspective against what else is in the market, because as Kirsten described earlier, you have all the coconut based products, nut based products, and the use of the hemp really allows us to have something that's equally as delicious or more delicious, we think, but that's subject uh, to people tasting it and thinking about it. But it helps us tap into a lot of things that customers want in the plant-based space, which is sustainable ingredients, and avoiding nuts, avoiding allergens, all those types of things. We can do that, but still have a delicious tasting product at the end of the day. So that's what's cool about it, is that it's really, we kind of found the sweet spot, if you like, of what hemp can do, and then a great application for it where it made a lot of sense, based on its attributes.
We've
hmm
got a decent moat, so I'm on I don't know, round 50 of recipe testing. It's a really interesting ingredient to work with. I think it's such a new supply chain, and also the legal and regulatory gray area. The bigger guys haven't touched it. Um, so
mm,
and you can even see that with like the ingredient suppliers. So like I've seen some recent acquisitions of like chickpea protein suppliers and pea protein suppliers, and all the big guys want a piece of that, and no one's really invested in hemp yet. It impacts your banking, it impacts your insurance, and any of the big guys who have like the R&D know-how on sort of like ingredient processing that might supply some of the other big companies, no one's really touched it. So for better or worse, we're definitely the first mover, which is challenging at times. I remember the first round of products I made in 2017, 2018. We needed a hemp heart oil, and all that was out there with whole hemp oil, and that's green, and it's very green in color and in flavor and in aroma, and it created for like a pretty snotty product. and it was very hemp tasting, and the color wasn't nice. And I really spent over a year just trying to figure out, like, is there a commercial supply chain here that can actually supply me with ingredients to make a product that tastes great? So there's been thousands of hours spent on that, tons of time spent on R&D. So we definitely have a little bit of a head start. Like, I'm out there with a machete clearing a path. And yeah, the hope is at some point, like, more big people will catch on to the fact that hemp is a great ingredient. And I think a really good example of a company that's done it at scale but doesn't talk about it is Elmhurst Milks. So they do plant milks. Their barista milk has hemp cream in it. Their creamers have hemp cream in it. And I don't really talk about it because the level of education and how unaware consumers are of what hemp is and that you can eat it and it can be delicious. Yeah, maybe 5% of our consumers are so stoked to buy a hemp product.
Yep, I'm one
The
of them.
other 95% are like, why would I eat that? That's gross. Hemp is rope. Hemp is bags and, sails and building materials. And why would I eat it? Which is an interesting thing to do as you're starting a brand and you're like, yes, hemp is so amazing. And I'm so excited to, like, be part of the future. And then everyone's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is nuts. And there are companies who are out there doing some great things, but it's like being that first mover, it's totally on your shoulders to educate anything from retail buyers to customers to media outlets and PR opportunities. We're out there shouting about it, and some people are incredibly passionate and interested, and the rest of them are like, what are you talking about?
Oh, and there's there's the middle of people who are kind of ambivalent about it. They're not passionate about it. They don't particularly think about it as something that's awful, but they just don't know why it would be in food and what it's doing there. So I guess what's interesting is, depending on who we're talking to, we might not mention hemp that much, depending on the audience who we're speaking to. We might, we'll talk about the benefits within the product that using the hemp gives us in terms of being super sustainable, allergen free, very low saturated fat content. So we'll talk about those things, but we won't necessarily lead with the hemp aspect. We'll talk about the attributes that we think matter to people who are buying these products, and then just having hemp in there, that's in the background for a lot of people, and that's fine. That's a good way to get hemp into again, is matching hemp with places, using it in places where it really makes a better product to what's out there in the industry or market already. And I guess that's what we think we're doing. So. But then there are other people, like on this show, where we can talk about the hemp, and we're very excited to do that. And then people do, when we find someone who's really into hemp, that's always great, because we know that's a slam dunk, customer for us. So, and then that's really exciting. And then we, have the conversation about hemp and all the million ways you can use it and why it's such a cool crop and all of that stuff. And we love that. But that's not always what we lead with. And that's okay, as long as it's doing its job in the product.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. Like, there's a risk that that you're taking using hemp, but it's not just like for a gimmick to use hemp, because it doesn't even really provide the name hemp, and saying that, oh, this is a hemp-based ice cream, doesn't really provide that much value. It's like the real benefit of using that product, that it makes your product better because you're using hemp. And so it's like,
exactly.
Like BMW is using hemp fiber in some of their panels. They don't talk about it. You will not see any release from BMW saying, yeah, we're making panels out of hemp. It just performs better, so that's why they're using it. Because like, people don't care. Like, I care. But I'm the minority.
Same here. Yeah. No, that's totally right.
It's interesting because it's even something that, like, regardless of what the product is with hemp, I get in, like, my echo chamber too much, where I'm just like, I'm so passionate about the plant, and anything that is incorporating hemp, like, I want to try it and I want to see what it's like. that's not the majority of people. Like, to sell a bunch of
Yeah.
ice cream, you need to make a great product. And plant-based diets are a lot more popular. So you're obviously appealing to a much wider population there, just going that route. So it's kind of like I guess the Facebook advertising issues were kind of like a blessing in disguise, maybe kind of just
They have to
makes
find
it,
other creative ways of talking about the product. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
for sure. But on the other hand, it would be cool to be able to also talk about that, for sure. So we that's still on the list of things to get fixed. And we found workarounds for it, or I should say specifically, Kirsten's found workarounds for it. So yeah,
Yeah, it's in the early days, getting the account shut down or getting your, automated message from Facebook that's like, you stop trying to sell class A's on Facebook. And I'm like, it's ice cream.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And it's, you get dinged by a bot. It's not a person. And then you could finally get to a person and they're like, yeah, we know, but we've got bigger fish to fry. And it's like, actually, like, we're here and we want to tell people about this, and it's challenging to not tell people about it because we've put so much work into it. And there are government officials out there who have an interest in turning hemp into a great domestic crop, and it's got potential, but like these silly hurdles aren't helping anybody. They're not helping the farmer, and there's that kind of chicken and egg piece of, well, the farmer needs demand to grow it, but the people need the farmer to grow it. And then, like, unless you've got those middle people to process it, the people like us who want it can't really get it in the form that we. So there's just this dance of like, how do you build an industry? And it would help to be able to freely talk about said industry. And I think CBD and the loophole of being able to call CBD hemp oil didn't do hemp foods any favors. It was great for CBD companies in 2019 to just call CBD hemp oil or full spectrum hemp oil. But then when you say on your back of pack, we use hemp oil, it's like, nope, that's the other hemp oil. So
Yeah.
whoever gave kale the glow up that it's gotten, please send them our way.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So starting in 2017. So in 2017, you're still in London,
Yeah.
seeing like what the supply chain is like for the various inputs that you might use for a product. Were you looking just in England, or were you looking like, all right, what does the supply chain look like in the United States, globally, or?
Globally. So started looking in the end of 2017, found some, still at this point, it wasn't even, legal to grow unless it was under a research grant. So found a couple, like got in touch with Victory Hemp, and they were like, yeah, we're trying to do this. And very quickly realized that wasn't like a commercialized thing. So I've worked with the Victory team and, talking about, like, as a product developer, if I'm looking for a hemp ingredient, this is what we need.
Okay.
And then 2018 went to the Institute of Food Technology conference in Chicago, where there's ingredient suppliers, and trying to see if anybody's doing anything with hemp, and found some people to work with. Also looked in the UK. There's a company called Good Hemp, who makes a really great hemp cream out of hemp hearts, but that has to be frozen. So shipping cases of frozen hemp cream across the ocean, not a viable situation for a lot of reasons. Yeah. So it was 2018 was really the year of like, figure out how to source ingredients and then figure out how to make a product that is sort of tastes great. Our product today versus our product then is like a whole other ball game. I think it tasted good then, but I think we're now, into a phase of greatness.
Nice.
And we've learned a lot about, introducing people to hemp and the flavors that come with it, and how do people feel about it. I think there's there must be some sort of taste receptor that some people have turned on versus off, because some people say, oh, I really noticed the hemp in this, and other people are like, I can't believe this isn't dairy. And it's not a green hemp taste at all. It's nutty. Occasionally it can be mildly kind of astringent, but often we find on the first bite, people might notice some taste from the hemp. Second bite, you just pick up all the other flavors, and it's very person to person specific, which has been really interesting to learn, for sure.
Yeah, that is interesting. Because, I mean, I've had the hemp proteins that, are really green and they don't taste good. Like, I think
No.
that's been one of the barriers to further adoption of hemp foods in general. Because, I mean, then when we get into other products that just want to utilize hemp protein, it's like that's the only protein that they have access to. So now their whole, whatever it is that they're trying to make, tastes like this really just like really green tasting protein, and there's better options out there. Like there's better plant-based protein options that were out there. And so I haven't had anything with I was just at NOCO in Colorado a couple months ago, and a lot of people were talking about the advancements that Victory has made specifically in that space of kind of a hemp protein with pretty much no flavor. And I haven't specifically tried it, but so it's good to see, like, and that's what I keep saying too. It's like people like you, Kirsten, who have food science backgrounds and material scientists and people like that's what we need to really progress the hemp space forward. It's like we need smart people to make hemp stuff better. Like it has all the potential. We just need those people to have an interest in it and kind of realize the potential of it. So I'm glad that you put the work in and constantly are doing R&D. And Carla, I'm sure you get to appreciate a lot of that on a daily
I do.
basis.
Yep. That's my other job, chief taster, which
Nice.
is the best job in the world, as
I
you can
can
imagine.
imagine. Yeah.
Although when Kirsten left for her trip the other day, what time did he leave? Sometime in the morning, and we were trying ice cream for breakfast, basically. So,
Hey.
I won't say that that's a tough part of the job, but it's chief taster is not
hazard of the
always
job.
perfect. It's a hazard. Yeah. Right.
That's funny.
I will say, be glad it's ice cream. My first job out of college was working on frozen savory meals, and having a broth supplier come in at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they're showing you how they make chicken broth or clam broth, and then you're tasting samples at 9 a.m. I would pick ice cream a million times over, no matter what time it needs to be, over a clam broth tasting.
I could see why you eventually landed at Ben and Jerry's too.
Yeah.
Nice. Something I'm just starting to see again now is in grocery stores, like product sampling. So I wanted to ask, obviously you both got the company started right before COVID pandemic gets started. What was that like in the early days trying to launch a food brand dealing with all the repercussions of the pandemic?
Yeah, we launched 6 months before COVID, which was great. We were in store, we were demoing, we were teaching people in Ohio about plant-based foods and hemp-based foods, and had really great success with demos. And then COVID shut that off. I think we were in a doubly unfortunate situation in that we couldn't fully advertise online, and we also couldn't really sell online. Shipping ice cream is a bit challenging and can be very expensive. Add in vaccines being shipped on dry ice and dry ice shortages. Sort of a perfect storm of not a great business to launch at the beginning of COVID. Yeah. We did see retail upticks and people buying ice cream at home, which was great. But it really allowed us to kind of buckle down and focus on what we were doing and do some R&D. And then we had a great opportunity actually come out of a canceled trade show where we were able to pitch online, and that's how we ended up getting into Sprouts. And that took about a year from our first chat with them to getting on shelves. So we ended up taking that year to kind of scale up, figure out our co-packing situation. And then we've just started a couple months ago getting back out in the wild and sampling in markets like LA and San Diego and Denver.
Nice. That's awesome. So with a when you're trying to get into these larger chains, do they typically will they do like a test like in one location before they roll it out nationwide, or how does that typically work?
So normally they will just have you send samples into their into them directly, into the buyers directly. So they'll test it in house. Buyers at grocery stores obviously taste a lot of products, so they feel like they have a pretty good handle on what they think is good and what isn't. Some are probably better than others, but they'll usually bring it in and they'll taste it with the whole room of colleagues and that kind of thing. They don't usually do individual store tests. As far as I know, I think it depends on the product. Maybe for something like ice cream, it's a bit more challenging to do. Some other products might be more suitable for that kind of thing, but generally they won't do that. Um, and it can be a challenge. Just if we're pitching to a store in California and we need to ship them ice cream for a one store test type thing, that's really expensive to do. Obviously, for that kind of opportunity, we probably would do it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not. Yeah, it's not usual practice. It's usually just the buyers that will taste things. They'll look at other data. They'll look at the data of your sales in other stores, and that kind of thing, and then they'll just make a kind of gut judgment on whether to bring it in or not. And if they give the approval, then it's all focused on logistics of how to get it there to their warehouse and that kind of thing. So that's kind of how the process works.
Gotcha. And so right now, is it just you two kind of handling all aspects of the business?
Yep, we wear a lot of hats.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, yeah, just us two managing all the different parts of the business, which is great because it gives such variety to our days, and we learn so much, which is great to be able to do. And then for obvious reasons, there's also a challenge, and sometimes you feel like you're never doing anything particularly well because you're trying to cover so many areas. So I think that will hopefully, fingers crossed, if this year keeps going in the direction it's going, which is a positive direction, that'll change and we'll be able to bring on some team members and that will really help us grow.
Awesome. That's exciting. And so if in the near future when I'm at a Sprouts or a different store that carries your products on the shelf, pricing in line with all other plant-based products?
Yeah, I think we sit pretty well in the set of plant-based ice creams. We're at $6.99 on most Sprout shelves, and most other shelves that we're on, and that's definitely towards the what you'd call the premium end, but not we're not the most expensive one in the set, and compared to the really bigger players in the set, we're only 50 cents or a dollar more than they are. So
Cool.
I think that's a pretty good place to be. Obviously, right now, um, costs of everything are going up. Some brands are raising their prices. So that's a challenging time. We might end up being exactly the same as even some of the bigger brands who used to price their products lower now might raise their prices. So it kind of depends how that all plays out. But yeah, we're not you're not paying double just to have a hemp ice cream or anything like that. And
Mm-hmm.
that was something that having someone like Kirsten, or Kirsten specifically in this case, to help us set up from the get go with a supply chain that meant that we would be able to price properly. She knew how to do that, and I think a lot of new food business owners struggle with that because that's obviously not their area of expertise. They might come from another background and there's a rude awakening when they get to the stage where they have to make a lot of product and if they try to use the ingredients they use to make a small kind of local farmers market version, yeah, you're not going to be able to meet the pricing that the grocery stores need, and you're going to be way more expensive on shelf. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so we knew from the start that we'd be able to price it at what was a reasonable price, and we want to be accessible. And like most other businesses, the more we grow, we should be able to gently reduce that price as we grow. That would be great because as we open up into more different types of store, we'd love to be able to do that and make a hemp based plant based product available to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. When it comes to like the sales process, are you is it a lot of trade shows, or is it like reaching out to buyers from regional chains, or how does that all work?
Yeah, a mix of both. Very strategic with the trade shows. We are tiny and bootstrapped, and don't like, unless we know we want to talk to a lot of buyers, a trade show can be very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And um, so right now, being very strategic of what retailers we want to go into, what markets are very receptive to this type of product, and what retailers really align with our mission of being better for you, plant-based, organic. And, Karl's really helped put together a great sales strategy of where to next, how do we support the accounts that we're in. It's crazy. We've spent some time in Sprouts and Erewhon and Jimbo's Naturally and down in San Diego, and you'll be in the store sampling, and people were like, "Wow, this is really good. Do they sell this here?" And you're like, "Oh my god!" Like, we're in the store sampling the product, and
I
there's
hope
still
so.
no awareness of this brand, and it's often coming from people who shop that door probably on a weekly basis. Oh, I've never seen this before. It's like, it's at eye level in the middle of the door of the category you're shopping on a weekly basis. So, yeah, we're just, in that point of really trying to build brand awareness and talk about the product and make people like, hey, you're a Sprouts shopper, try this new product. And Karl's really built a strong sales strategy to help us kind of build brand awareness within the retailers and with customers in our key markets.
Yeah, and I think for a small brand, it's I think you want to try and avoid going too broad too quickly. You want to stay fairly narrow and focused on increasing sales in the accounts you already have before you start trying to go add more accounts, more customers. Because if you don't have that sell through in the store, you're firstly at risk of the store removing you at some point, and then of course that will make it more difficult to get more customers on that basis. And also, then of course you're just not selling that well. So I think we've got a great footing now, and Sprouts were a company that really backed hemp. They were really positive, bullish on hemp. Hemp foods and bringing in brands that used hemp. So that was great for us. So we feel like we've landed in a good place, and now it's up to us to really prove that we can sell well in there. And as Kirsten was just saying, and it's not the consumer's fault that it's just there's so many brands in the freezer or on the shelf. It's really hard for someone to notice a new brand, especially during the pandemic, when most people obviously didn't want to linger in grocery stores and try and discover new things. They were just in and out buying what they knew and not paying attention to anything else on the shelf, for good reason. So it's been great that we're able to do the demos again, as Kirsten said, and get the product into people's hands. And then I think there are things we can do with other companies using hemp in foods to kind of band together and create some awareness out of store and in store where we sell alongside other brands that use hemp. We can band together and start talking about those benefits that hemp provides in foods together, and that should enable us to shout a bit louder and get that awareness out there. So we are working on that kind of thing in the background for sure. I think we always think it's cool when another brand is using hemp in food, and it's great to partner with them and try and make people aware of the benefits of having that ingredient in there. So that's definitely something we can do to raise awareness. And then we'll hopefully grow from there.
Yeah, because I mean, like, there's not too many companies utilizing hemp in their food for some of the reasons that we already touched on. Is kind of some associated risk with doing so. So rising tide lifts all boats. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, and we keep seeing more and more, which is really cool. I think when we first started, we struggled to find many, and in the last few years, there have been quite a few that have popped up that are starting to do it. So, so that's exciting. And I think, as you said, rising tide lifts all boats, and that's definitely the approach that we're all going to be taking together.
Yeah, for sure. So
yeah, shout out to our are hemp warriors in hemp foods, like Grounded Foods makes delicious cheeses. Catalyst Creamery down in Tampa, fellow food scientist who is beating the drum on hemp and making really some of the best plant-based cheeses out there. Seedly in New York, Let There Be Hemp Chips. Like there's some, in the last couple of years, we've really dialed in some good products. Hempway Foods, Good Seed Burgers. Like you can make a whole meal. Like you can have a great hemp cheeseburger. There are some people doing hemp bread stuff and finish it off with a nice hemp sundae, and you're good to go.
Yeah, we'll have to. I've seen some, I guess, like, I don't know really what the business is, but it's basically people who will infuse a whole meal and come to your house and serve like a party, essentially, like a catering service that is all infusion. And so you don't even need any THC or other cannabinoids, just all hemp-based products. So I need a local chef around here to start throwing parties, all hemp-based foods.
I was just thinking, I need to find like a space in, I don't know, Denver or Los Angeles or San Diego and just do like a cool hemp foods barbecue where we have like hemp burgers, hemp cheeseburgers, hemp ice cream sundaes, the full thing. And then we can have like a happy hour with some sort of infused beverage and the whole evening of hemp.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let me know when that gets planned. I'll take a trip out there.
Yeah, we should get working on that. I'm sure there might be some people listening who might know a space where we can put that together. So that would be cool. Let's work on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know in Denver specifically, like consumption, like licensed consumption lounges are starting to get rolled out. In Massachusetts specifically, that's right around the corner for stuff like that. So I think the venues will be there for that type of thing in the near future.
Awesome.
So that's exciting. Cool. So we'll wrap it up there. Any other kind of parting words or anything that you guys want to wrap up with?
Go find some doozy pots. To all your listeners, you know, we love to hear from customers. We're not supposed to pick favorites, like picking a favorite child, but when we've been demoing, our banana cinnamon date flavor has become a cult favorite. So it's a banana gelato with really nice cinnamon from burlap and barrel and a date syrup swirl. So it's, people say it's like a cinnamon roll or banana bread or bananas Foster. And then chocolate mint chocolate chip is my ode to my childhood favorite. So instead of a green mint chip, it's a dark chocolate base with some organic peppermint in it and then really nice chocolate chips. And having your own ice cream brand means you get to make your own favorite flavors so that other people can enjoy them. And so right now, those are probably my two go-tos.
Okay.
And I would just say, I'd echo something you said earlier, actually, which was hemp is not a gimmick. It's genuinely something that can make many different products across many different industries better for people, better for planet. So that's why we're using it, and that's why there is plenty of applications out there for hemp. So go eat more hemp, wear more hemp, build with hemp, all of those good things. And then, of course, most people are aware of the other uses as well. So that's what I'd say. Yeah, hemp is here to stay.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you both. So in the description of the video, I'll put the store locator on your site is really nice. Kind of allows you to just dial into wherever you're at or where you're planning to be in the future and find some stores. So is that updated on a regular basis? Like if someone sees that? Okay. Awesome.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll put the website link, the store locator, social channels. If anyone wants to find you guys on social media, they'll be able to do so. And just thank you both again very much for your time today. It was great learning more about the process and kind of behind the scenes of the start of the company and what it takes to kind of have a frozen hemp product in the market.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks for having us and keep doing the great work you're doing. We love it.
Thank you.